I was 3 weeks away from marrying the love of my life. At least, I thought I was. We lived in a little apartment just outside the city, registry done, tux measured, venue booked. Everything was in place. But one night, over beers, my buddy told me he saw her with some guy at a party she never mentioned. That one sentence kicked off a spiral of doubt, tracking devices, private investigators, and betrayal deeper than I ever imagined. And me? I played it cool. Kept planning the wedding, smiled for the engagement photos, said, "I love you," every morning. Right up until the moment she was standing at the altar, and I was already gone. I was out of her life forever, completely and irrevocably. I pictured her humiliated, surprised face. She deserved it. But it wasn't over yet. 7 months later, she knocked on my door. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and go back to where it all started. It was just another lazy Friday night. Me and Mike posted up at Rusty's bar like we've done 100 times before. Place was half full. The jukebox was playing some old Skinner track, and the bartender, Travis, had our usuals ready before we even sat down. One of those small-town rituals, you know? Predictable, familiar, like clockwork. I liked that about life. I liked routine. Felt safe. Mike and I were catching up. Nothing too deep. Work, trucks, the usual gripe about gas prices and how the local high school team keeps choking in playoffs. He's one of those guys who always says what's on his mind, sometimes without thinking. That's just Mike. Always has been. So when he leaned in over his beer and dropped a question that didn't fit the mood, it threw me. "Hey man," he said, voice a notch lower, "you cool with your fiancée being at that party with some guy last weekend?" I blinked. "What party?" He paused for a second like he was trying to gauge how much I knew. That look in his eyes, like he already knew I didn't have a damn clue what he was talking about, made my gut clench. "Thought you knew," he said, scratching at the label on his bottle. "Her friend's birthday thing. Couple folks from out of town. Buddy of mine was there. Said she was cozy with some dude most of the night." I chuckled, mostly out of reflex, trying to play it off. "Nah," I said, waving it away. "She told me she just had a quiet dinner with the girls. Just them. Nothing major." Mike shrugged, sipping his beer. "Well, maybe your buddy's mistaken then. Just thought it looked. I dunno. Not like friends, you know?" He didn't press the issue, and we went back to talking about the Bengals' chances this season, but the tone of the night had changed. My brain didn't let that comment go. It echoed. "You cool with your fiancée being at that party with some dude last weekend?" The words kept cycling in my head like bad background music. The rest of our conversation blurred after that. I nodded when he talked, laughed when he laughed, but truth be told, I was somewhere else completely. My mind was doing laps in a mental track it didn't want to be on. We wrapped up around midnight. Mike threw a 20 on the bar and clapped me on the back before heading out into the cool night. I sat there for a bit longer, sipping the last of my beer, staring into the glass like it held some kind of answer. Now look, I ain't the jealous type. Never have been. Me and my fiancée, let's call her Emily. We'd been together almost 3 years by that point. Lived together for 2. Shared a place off Maple Street. Nothing fancy. 2-bedroom apartment, rented, old brick building with windows that creaked when you opened them and a heater that worked half the time. But it was ours. We picked out the couch together. Argued over curtains. Had a goofy little kitchen dance routine we did when cooking. You know, real life stuff. She was smart, funny, a little stubborn, and man, when she smiled at me, it was like the world got quiet for a second. I loved her. Still did that night. But something about Mike's comment wouldn't let me sleep. That night, when I got home, she was already in bed. Hair tied up, breathing soft. Peaceful. I stood in the doorway for a solid minute, watching her. Everything looked normal. Felt normal. But that comment, it was like a splinter in my brain. I crawled into bed beside her and tried to shake it off, but I couldn't. Next morning, she made pancakes like nothing had happened. Kissed me on the cheek, told me she loved me, then sat at the table scrolling through her phone. I stared at her, waiting for some hint, some weird expression, something out of place, but it was all picture perfect. And that made it worse. I told myself I trusted her. Hell, I wanted to. But doubt doesn't listen to reason. It's like smoke under a door. Once it slips in, it just spreads. All weekend, I kept playing Mike's words over in my head, trying to picture her at that party, laughing, holding a drink, maybe leaning a little too close to some guy I didn't know. Was he taller than me? Funnier? Did she smile at him like she used to smile at me? I hated myself for thinking it, but there I was, staring at her when she wasn't looking, watching her scroll through her phone, wondering who she was texting. What she was hiding. If she was hiding anything. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Because you don't want to be that guy, the paranoid one who starts accusing his fiancée based on hearsay. But still, the seed was planted. And deep down, I knew I wasn't going to be able to ignore it. So I started paying more attention. Where she went. Who she mentioned. What nights she stayed out a little longer than usual. All the little things you don't notice when trust is still whole. I didn't know it then, but that night at Rusty's was the beginning of the end. Or maybe it was the beginning of the truth. Either way, nothing was ever the same after that whisper. Saturday morning rolled in slow, hazy with that kind of gray sky that makes the coffee taste stronger. I was standing by the kitchen window in my boxers, staring at the backyard like it held answers, when Emily shuffled in wearing one of my old college hoodies and those fuzzy socks she never matched. She looked like herself. Comfortable, cozy, humming something under her breath as she went for the coffee pot. I watched her for a moment, watched the way she moved, casual and warm, and told myself it was probably nothing. Mike probably just got it wrong. Or maybe it really was just some dude at a party. No big deal. But my gut said otherwise, and my gut ain't let me down much in life. So, I took a breath and said, "Hey, can I ask you something?" She didn't even look up. "Of course," she said, opening the fridge and grabbing the milk. "Were you at a party last weekend?" That made her pause. Just for a half second. Not long, but long enough. Her hand stopped halfway to the counter before she moved again, like nothing had happened. "Oh," she said, setting the milk down. "You mean Taylor's birthday?" She turned and looked at me then, calm as a lake on a windless day. "Yeah, we were just at Taylor's. Me, Jenny, Sierra, usual girls. Taylor's cousin was there. Brought a couple of his friends. Nothing crazy. That was it. No panic. No fumbling. Just a smooth answer with all the right details tucked in. But something about how she said it. I can't explain it exactly. It was like her voice was too even, like she'd practiced the words already. There wasn't even a flicker of surprise in her eyes, just a steady look like she was already waiting on the question. I nodded slowly and tried to act normal. "Mike said one of his friends saw you there." "Thought it might have been someone else," I said, half smiling, watching her face close. She took a sip of her coffee. "Well, yeah, I was there. Didn't think it was a big deal. You were working all weekend and didn't seem like you wanted to do anything, so I figured I'd go. Just girls having drinks. You know how it is." She smiled, the kind of smile she gives when she wants a conversation to be over. She leaned on the counter, brushing her hair back like she wasn't even the least bit bothered. That smile used to calm me. Used to make me feel like I was home. But this time, it made me feel like I was being handled. I let it go. I nodded, walked over, kissed her on the forehead, and told her I was going to run out and grab some stuff from the hardware store. Truth was, I didn't need anything. I just needed air. And space. I drove around for nearly an hour with the windows down and the radio low. Not really going anywhere, just passing streets I'd driven 100 times, trying to sort out the fog in my head. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something about how smooth that story came out didn't sit right. There was no fidgeting, no second-guessing, not even the kind of filler words most folks use when recalling something unexpected. It was like reading a script. And the pause, barely noticeable, when I first asked. That pause hit me in the back of the mind and stayed there like a splinter. By the time I got back home, Emily was on the couch with her laptop, half watching some show and tapping away at an email. She looked up and smiled again, like nothing had changed. I smiled back, slid off my boots, and joined her. But my mind was elsewhere. The rest of the weekend went by quiet. She was cheerful, affectionate, even made that damn cheesy lasagna I like, the one that takes her 2 hours and a pile of dirty dishes. Everything looked perfect from the outside. But inside, something had shifted. The thing is, I'm not a suspicious guy by nature. I don't go looking for problems where there ain't none. I've always believed in giving people space, letting them have their lives and their friends. That's how we lasted this long, I thought, trust and space. But there's a difference between space and silence. And what I felt growing between us wasn't freedom. It was something else. It was the way she kept her phone screen tilted away from me on the couch. The way she laughed at texts but didn't say from who. The way she got a little too interested in planning her week around other people when she used to check with me first. I caught myself doing things I never thought I'd do. Watching when she walked out of a room. Checking the time she left and the time she came home. Listening for names she didn't say twice. Looking at her when she wasn't looking at me and wondering who else she smiled at like that. And through it all, I said nothing. Because I didn't want to be wrong. I didn't want to be that guy, the one who ruined something good because of a moment of doubt. But it didn't feel good anymore. It felt like something was hiding behind the curtains, just out of reach. And it wasn't just Mike's words anymore. It was something I could feel every time I looked her in the eye and didn't recognize what looked back. Some people say you know when something's wrong, even if you don't have the facts yet. Like when a dog suddenly goes quiet after barking all night. You don't know what's changed, but you sure as hell know it has. That was me. I didn't know exactly what was going on, but I knew something was, and I wasn't about to let it slide. I ain't proud of it, but I started snooping. It wasn't like I kicked the front door open, turned into some kind of movie spy, or lost my mind and started tearing the place apart. Nah, it was quiet. Subtle. The kind of snooping that eats away at you more than it gets you answers. It started small, little things. One afternoon, she was in the shower and her phone lit up on the counter. I didn't mean to grab it. I swear, I just looked at it. But it buzzed again, and the screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize. Some guy named Mitch. The message preview just said, LOL, that's hilarious. Can't wait. Now, that could have meant anything. Could have been a friend. Could have been a group chat. Could have been harmless. But when your gut's already twitching, that kind of thing lands different. So I picked the phone up. Just to look. Nothing wild. Just a few scrolls. No flirty messages, no late-night texts, just a handful of conversations that seemed normal. Too normal, if I'm being honest. Like someone had scrubbed the record. That's when it hit me. I didn't even know what I was looking for. I was chasing shadows. I caught myself doing stupid little things, like pretending to be asleep when she got up in the middle of the night, just to see if she picked up her phone. Once, I even counted how many minutes she was in the bathroom. It was getting in my head, messing me up. One Thursday evening, she told me she was going out with her friends after work. Girls' night. Drinks and catching up. I told her to have fun, kissed her goodbye like I always did. But as soon as the door closed, I sat there staring at it for a long minute. Then I grabbed my truck keys and followed her. Felt ridiculous doing it. Like I was the villain in my own life. I stayed a couple cars back, kept my lights off when I could, made sure not to get too close. She drove out to that strip by the interstate, the one with the Starbucks, a nail place, and a wine bar, where people pay too much for stuff that tastes like grapes and regret. She parked, got out, met up with two girls I recognized, Jenny and Sierra. Laughing, arms linked, just regular stuff. They walked into the wine bar, and I sat in the truck like a damn fool, feeling both relieved and ashamed. She came home around 11 that night, same time she said she would. Kicked her shoes off, asked if I wanted to split a leftover burger, and curled up beside me like nothing was different. Like everything was still okay. It happened again the next weekend. She said she was going to a coworker's baby shower. I followed, half expecting something shady. But sure enough, she pulled into a suburban neighborhood, walked up with a gift bag, and joined a group of women by a lawn full of pastel balloons. Clean again. That was the pattern for about 2 weeks. I'd watch. I'd follow. Sometimes I'd sneak a glance at her phone when she was cooking or left it charging in the other room. Nothing. Not a single thing that screamed betrayal. If anything, it looked too good. Like a picture frame hung, just slightly crooked. You don't notice it unless you're staring too hard. And I was staring way too hard. I started feeling like a lunatic. Like maybe I was projecting. Maybe Mike had it wrong, or maybe I had it wrong, turning a dumb bar conversation into full-blown suspicion. One night, I sat out on the balcony with a beer in my hand and thought, what the hell am I doing? I looked around our apartment, the worn couch, the framed photo from the lake, her favorite mug drying by the sink, and thought, am I really about to blow all this up over a hunch? But even as I thought it, my gut said something else. That itch hadn't gone away. The doubt was still there, living under my skin like a mosquito bite you just can't leave alone. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I called Ray. Ray's been my best friend since high school. We met in detention. He got caught skipping algebra. I got busted carving my initials in a desk. Ever since then, we've been tight. He was the first guy I called when I proposed to Emily, and the first one I asked to be my best man. He even offered to be our wedding driver, said he'd deck out his truck with ribbons and a cooler full of champagne. Ray doesn't talk a lot, but when he does, it usually matters. I met him at Miller's Diner after work, sat down across from him in a booth that still smelled like grease and bad decisions, and laid it all out. The doubts, the following, the nothing I kept finding. He didn't judge, just listened. When I finished, he stirred his coffee and said, You ever think she's just real good at hiding things? I didn't say anything. He leaned in a bit, his voice low. You're not crazy, man. Your gut's been solid since we were kids. Hell, you're the one who figured out Coach Simmons was cheating at poker in '08. I laughed, but it wasn't funny. Ray tapped his spoon on the edge of the cup. You want peace of mind? You gotta go further. Get real eyes on her. I raised an eyebrow. What, like, hire someone? He nodded. Bro, get a GPS in her car. Better yet, get a private investigator. Let them do the dirty work. You're too close to it. Too emotional. I stared at him. Just think about it, he said, finishing his coffee. Better to know the truth now than after you've walked down that aisle. He was right. As much as it stung, he was absolutely right. And that was the moment I realized I wasn't done snooping. I was just getting started. So that Saturday morning, while Emily was out visiting her mom for brunch and a mani-pedi, I drove over to my cousin Jason's shop. Jason's the type who can rig up a Harley engine from a bucket of scrap metal and a ball of duct tape. Quiet guy. Knows his way around wires better than people. He owed me a favor from way back, and when I told him what I needed, he didn't ask questions, just nodded once and told me to leave the keys. By sundown, her car was fitted. Tracker was small, tucked up under the bumper near the rear differential. Battery operated, no blinking lights, nothing to see unless you were looking real hard. I paired it to an old phone I kept in my toolbox drawer. That thing hadn't rung in 2 years, and now it was about to be my window into whatever was going on. Sunday rolled around normal. Emily came back with shiny nails and a new candle from one of those fancy stores that makes the house smell like pine and vanilla. She smiled easy, asked me if I wanted burgers or pasta for dinner, then curled up on the couch with a blanket and that old quilt her grandma made. You'd think it was just another day in a perfect life. And maybe it was. But the tracker didn't care about feelings. The first few days were nothing special. Work, gym, grocery runs. On Thursday, she hit the wine shop after work, then dropped by Sierra's place for what looked like a casual visit. Friday, she stayed in. Saturday was errands and brunch again with her mom. I started thinking maybe I was the problem. Maybe my mind had gotten twisted from all the suspicion, and she was just out there living life like any decent person would. Then came the second Thursday. I was at work, lunch break, biting into a cold ham sandwich when the alert pinged on the tracker app. She wasn't headed to work. Not to the gym. Not to anywhere she'd normally go. She was driving west, way west. Past her office, past the neighborhoods we knew. The route dipped into the edge of town where everything looks a little forgotten, old brick buildings, shuttered stores, and apartment complexes that all have numbers instead of names. The little dot stopped at a place I didn't recognize. Complex off Whitley Road, kind of tucked back behind a gas station and a payday loan spot. Not the worst part of town, but not exactly somewhere you'd go for fun. I watched it for a while. 20 minutes. 40. Hour and a half. I kept refreshing the screen, watching the blue dot stay put, like it had roots. That night, she came home like she always did. Calm, collected. Walked in, hung up her bag, took off her shoes, and gave me a kiss like nothing in the world had changed. She said she was catching up with her usual girls, said Jenny had a new couch she wanted everyone to test out. Talked about wine and playlists like it was any other Thursday evening. I nodded and smiled and asked her how Jenny was doing. She said fine. I asked who all was there. She rattled off a few names. Left out Taylor. Left out Sierra. Just a few folks. After dinner, while she was folding laundry, I went to the garage and pulled out my phone, the one paired to the tracker. Still had the location locked. I tapped it, let it pull up on the map, then took a screenshot. Printed it out on my dusty old inkjet, circled the address with a red Sharpie, and tucked it in my back pocket. Next Thursday, I followed her. Didn't say anything. Didn't make up an excuse. Just waited until she left, gave her a 5-minute head start, and took the back roads. It was late afternoon, sun already starting to dip, casting everything in that golden light that makes even worn-down buildings look like paintings. I parked across the street from the complex, half-shielded behind a row of half-dead shrubs. Sure enough, there was her car. Same silver sedan. Same parking spot. Only this time, I waited until I saw the door open. And out stepped Jenny, her best friend. Hair pulled back, tank top, coffee mug in hand. Emily stepped in and closed the door behind her. I sat there for a while, not sure whether I should feel stupid or relieved. Of all the possibilities, I hadn't thought of that one. Jenny's place. Maybe she was telling the truth all along. Maybe it was just a weird corner of town and not something shady. I drove home, didn't say a word about following her. That night, after we brushed our teeth and crawled into bed, she pulled the blankets up and curled close. Her head rested on my chest like it always had. I stared at the ceiling, trying to quiet the storm in my head. But it wasn't over. The next morning, over breakfast, I brought it up casually. "Hey," I said, spooning scrambled eggs onto my plate. "Where were you yesterday evening again?" She didn't flinch. "Coffee with the girls." I set my fork down, pulled out the folded picture from my back pocket, and slid it across the table. She looked at it, saw the address, saw her car. There was a half-second blink. That pause again. Then she smiled. "That's Jenny's place," she said, cool as ice. "You caught me." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm planning a surprise for the wedding," she said. "Wanted it to be perfect. That's all." She reached across the table and touched my hand. "You'll see. Just trust me a little longer." And in that moment, I didn't know what to believe. I sat at that kitchen table long after she'd gone off to bed, the photo still lying there between my coffee mug and the half-eaten toast. Her words were still bouncing around in my skull like a hammer in a dryer. It's a surprise for the wedding. Now, I've been on the receiving end of surprises before, some good, some bad. But something in the way she said it made my stomach turn. It wasn't the words. It was the look that came with them. A flash of something behind her smile. Like she was testing me. Like she already knew I wouldn't ask more questions. I wanted to believe her. Honestly, I did. God knows it would have been easier to take her at her word and move on. Would have been easier to chalk all this up to nerves or cold feet or some harmless little secret she was cooking up with her girlfriends to make the wedding special. But easier don't always mean right. And that gut feeling? That itch I couldn't scratch? It wasn't going away. Next morning, while she was still brushing her hair in the bathroom, I grabbed my truck keys and drove into town. The PI's office was on the second floor of a narrow brick building wedged between a barber shop and a place that claimed to fix phones and unlock jailbroken tablets. The stairs creaked under my boots, and the hallway smelled like old paint and coffee. There was a little gold plaque on the door, Weston Investigations. I knocked, waited. A tall guy opened it. Late 40s, maybe early 50s. Gray creeping into his temples, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. He looked like a guy who'd seen a lot and didn't blink easy. "You Weston?" I asked. "Nope. I'm Mitch Weston's son." "Name's Clay," he said, opening the door wider. "My dad's retired. I run the place now. You need something looked into?" I nodded. "Yeah," I said, stepping inside. "I need the truth." He motioned to the chair across from his desk. The place was neat but lived in. File cabinets, a coffee maker, stacks of folders. The blinds were drawn, the light dim. Felt like a room built for secrets. I told him everything. Not in one long dump, but piece by piece. The tracker, the weird trips to Jenny's place, the way her story matched but didn't feel right. I told him about the surprise she claimed she was planning, how smooth her answers always came, how there wasn't a single crack in her act. He listened without interrupting, only jotting down notes once or twice. "You want confirmation?" he finally said. "I want the full picture," I said. "I need to know. Good, bad, whatever it is, I'm done guessing." He leaned back, nodding. "Fair enough. I'll need her routine, vehicle info, photos, any addresses she's mentioned lately, places she shops, works out, if any. You got a timeline, or is this open-ended?" "Wedding's in 3 weeks," I said. "I need to know before I stand up there and say anything I can't take back." That got a slight raise of the eyebrow. "Understood." He gave me a list of things to email him, photos, license plate, a copy of the floor plan from our apartment complex. He said he'd start that week, keep it quiet, only contact me through the burner number I gave him. I left that office with a strange mix of emotions. I should have felt better, like I had taken control. But instead, I just felt heavy, like something was dragging behind me, and I couldn't quite see what it was. Back home, Emily was in the living room flipping through a wedding magazine, circling centerpieces and muttering to herself about floral arrangements. She looked up and smiled when I came in. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "Just had to grab some sandpaper for that cabinet I'm refinishing for your folks." She nodded, satisfied with the excuse. We spent the rest of the day going through wedding playlists, picking appetizers, and confirming head counts. I even sat through a half-hour phone call with the DJ where she debated the difference between romantic slow and casual slow. I didn't even know that was a category. We smiled for our engagement photos the following weekend. Park shoot, golden hour, her in a white summer dress, and me sweating through a button-up I hadn't worn since last Easter. We laughed. We posed. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered something sweet about our future, and I smiled like it was the only thing I'd ever wanted to hear. But deep down, behind that smile, behind every nod and yes dear, and joke I made about seating charts, I was bracing for impact. I found myself rehearsing conversations in my head, what I'd say if she was hiding something, how I'd react if it turned out to be nothing at all. I thought about how I'd look her in the eyes on our wedding day and say vows I didn't trust. That thought haunted me most, because I knew, deep down, I wasn't a liar. Not in love. Not with someone I planned to spend the rest of my life with. And if I said those words, I had to mean them. That gut feeling? It wasn't just about catching her in something. It was about making sure I didn't get trapped in a lie of my own. So I kept showing up, kept being the good fiancé. I helped with the wine tasting, agreed to do a goofy couple's dance for the reception, even laughed at her dad's fifth retelling of how he met her mom. But every day, I watched that tracker. Every day, I waited for a call from Clay. Every day, I braced myself. Because deep down, I already knew. Something was coming. It was a Thursday morning, right before lunch, when my burner phone buzzed. I was working in the garage, sanding down an old pine dresser for the guest room. Dust in the air, country radio humming in the background. The number wasn't saved, but I knew who it was. I let it ring once more before answering. Yeah, I said, trying to keep my voice level. Clay Weston, the voice replied. You got a minute? I did. Of course I did. I shut off the sander, wiped my hands on an old rag, and sat down on the workbench stool like a man waiting on bad news from the doctor. I've got everything, he said. Photos. Logs. Video. You'll want to come in. There wasn't much more said after that. I think I just mumbled something like, okay, and hung up. I sat there for a while, staring at the phone, heartbeat ticking behind my ears. The drive to his office was quiet. No music. No window down. Just the hum of the tires and the occasional rattle from the backseat toolbox. The world outside felt like it was in slow motion, trees barely moving, lights too long at every intersection, pedestrians walking like they didn't have a care. When I got there, Clay had the folder ready. No ceremony. Just slid it across the desk and said, take your time. It was thick. Manila folder, creased at the corners, stuffed with what felt like 2 lifetimes worth of proof. The weight of it in my hands felt like holding a brick. I opened it. First page, timestamped photo. Her car. Jenny's apartment. Nothing I hadn't seen before. Second page, another photo. Different place. Another apartment I didn't recognize. Same car. 2 weeks prior. Again, late evening. Then came the pictures. At first, I expected to see what I'd feared all along, Emily with another man. And yeah, he was in there. Same guy from the birthday party Mike had mentioned all those weeks back. Him and her, side by side, arms around each other, a look that told you everything without saying a word. But what stopped me cold, what really knocked the wind out of me, was the next photo. It wasn't some random guy. It was Jenny, her best friend, the one who brought chips to our game nights, the one who helped pick out flowers for the wedding, the one who called me brother-in-law and laughed like she meant it. There they were, Emily and Jenny, sitting close, faces leaned in, fingers laced together like they were more than friends. Too close. Way too close. I blinked, rubbed my eyes like maybe I was seeing it wrong. But there was no mistaking it. And it wasn't just Jenny. There was another woman too, blonde, wearing a sundress I recognized from one of their so-called girls' nights. She was just as cozy, just as involved. I sat there frozen, flipping through more photos, more timestamps. Every page seemed to rewrite who I thought Emily was. She cheated on me? With Jenny? And someone else? I never expected that. Not once. I braced myself for another man. Even 2. But this? This was a whole other life I didn't know about. Logs showed regular trips. Not just Thursdays. Fridays. Sundays. Lunchtime meetups. Little 30-minute visits that made no sense unless you knew the context. And now I did. Then the video. I hesitated before playing it. But my hand moved on its own. Clay just sat back and turned the monitor toward me. It was grainy, pulled from what must have been a long lens. Looked like a camera hidden in a backpack or inside a parked car. Soundless, shaky, but clear enough to tell who was who. There was Emily, laughing with Jenny in a parking lot. The blonde joined. Hugs. Too close again. They walked into a unit. Half-hour later, they left with a guy none of us knew. Different unit. Different story. Another video, Jenny's place again. Emily arriving, hair done up, makeup perfect, holding a small gift bag. She kissed Ginny on the cheek, too slow. They looked like more than just friends. The kind of kiss you only give when you know something private is going to happen after. I didn't finish the rest. I closed the folder, laid it on the desk, and just sat there. Clay didn't say anything. He just nodded slowly and leaned back, waiting. Probably seen a dozen guys like me walk in with questions and leave hollowed out by the answers. I didn't cry, didn't cuss, didn't flip the desk or storm out. I just sat there, feeling like the floor under my boots had disappeared. Like I was weightless in the worst way possible. Like all the planning, all the smiles, all the days we spent building something, none of it was ever real. This was who I was about to marry? This was the woman I bought a ring for? Took photos with? Dreamed about building a home and raising kids with? I felt empty. Not mad. Not heartbroken. Just empty. When I finally stood, I thanked Clay. Honest to God, thanked him. Told him he did good work. He nodded, handed me a copy of everything on a flash drive, and told me to take care of myself. I walked down those same creaky steps slower than I went up them the first time. Outside, the sun was shining like nothing had changed. The world still spun. People still walked to lunch and checked their phones and carried coffee cups like life was normal. But I was different now. Something inside me had shifted. Quietly. Permanently. I drove home on autopilot. Parked in my usual spot. Walked inside like I was coming back from the store. Emily was on the couch, laughing at something on TV, phone in her hand, wearing one of my hoodies like she owned the damn place, and in that moment, I knew. She didn't even look up. "Hey babe," she said. "You hungry?" I told her no. That I was just gonna go take a shower. And I did. I stood in the water a long time. Let it wash over me like maybe it could carry away everything I now knew. But truth doesn't rinse off. It stays. Sinks into your bones and builds a home there. When I got out, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. And that's when I made the decision. It wasn't loud. No yelling, no ultimatums. No confrontation. No dramatic TV moment. Just a quiet, steady resolve deep in my chest. I couldn't marry her. I couldn't even look her in the eye without seeing the people she chose over me. The lies she told with a smile. The way she kept planning a wedding like it meant something. No, she wasn't the woman I thought she was. So I started planning too. Not a wedding. An exit. I woke up to sunlight creeping in through the blinds, painting gold lines across the foot of the bed. Wedding day. Emily was already half-dressed, hair still damp, moving around the bedroom in a quiet rush. She didn't say much, just smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and said her mom was picking her up to start hair and makeup at their place before heading to the chapel. She had a small bag packed and one of those little white robe things brides wear before they put on the dress. "I'll see you at the altar," she said. "Yeah," I replied, nodding. She paused in the doorway, eyes shining, then headed out. I watched the door close behind her. I waited until I heard her mom's car pull away, then I sat on the edge of the bed for a long while, staring at the floor. It was quiet in the apartment. The kind of quiet that rings. I got up, poured a cup of coffee, stood at the window just watching the world roll on. The neighbor's kid was bouncing a basketball. Two sparrows were fighting over something near the curb. A delivery truck rumbled past like it had somewhere important to be. Everything looked the same, but everything had changed. Today was supposed to be the biggest day of our lives. Flowers, music, rings, cake. A kiss that sealed the future. But all I could think about was the folder. The photos. The logs. The truth. The woman I was supposed to marry wasn't the woman I thought she was. And I couldn't pretend anymore, not for her, not for the guests, not for the sake of looking like a good guy in front of people who didn't even know the whole story. I walked to the closet and looked at the suit I picked out months ago. Charcoal gray. Crisp white shirt. The tie Emily insisted brought out the color of my eyes. My name was stitched into the inside pocket. I ran my hand across the fabric once, then turned away. My bag was already packed. I'd done it the week before, just in case I needed to move fast. It sat tucked under the bed, bare bones, some clothes, documents, a wad of cash, and the burner phone I used during the whole PI mess. I didn't leave a note. Didn't need to. What could I write that would say anything I hadn't already felt 100 times over? I wasn't interested in justifying myself anymore. I wasn't trying to hurt her, but I wasn't going to marry her, either. So I grabbed the bag, took one last long look around our little apartment, and walked out the door. The air outside was cool for a spring day. Sky clear. Church bells somewhere in the distance. A good day for a wedding. Just not mine. I got in the truck, pulled out of the lot, and started driving. Not fast. Just steady. Like a man who'd made peace with a hard decision and didn't need to look back. No calls. No messages. No goodbyes. I had already canceled the lease behind her back, transferred it into her name, paid the last month in full, and even left a handwritten envelope with my key in the drop box near the leasing office. My name was off the lease, off the mailbox, off the grid. At that very moment, Emily was probably sitting in front of a mirror, getting her eyeliner touched up, laughing with her bridesmaids, sipping champagne out of some novelty cup. She'd be getting texts from her cousins, last-minute calls from the florist, people tagging her in photos already saying today's the day. Her dress would be hanging in her mom's guest room, veil steamed, shoes lined up. She'd be glowing. She had no idea I was gone. By the time the ceremony was set to start, folks were already taking their seats, programs in hand, pastor adjusting his mic, her dad probably pacing in the back, rehearsing whatever speech he had planned for the reception. And her? I picture her standing just outside the chapel doors, bouquet in hand, smile plastered across her face, waiting for someone to tell her it was time. But no one ever would. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. The whispers would have started. Her mom calling my phone, straight to voicemail. The groomsmen looking at each other, trying not to say what they were all thinking. Then someone would have had to tell her. I wasn't coming. There was no traffic jam. No flat tire. No second thoughts. I had left. And I wasn't coming back. After the ceremony was declared canceled, I imagine her being driven back to our apartment still in her dress. Makeup smudged. Eyes red. The ride probably felt like it lasted forever. She'd opened the door expecting something. Maybe a note. Maybe me, waiting to explain, to apologize. But the apartment was empty. No boots by the door. No jacket on the hook. Drawers half-gutted. My toothbrush gone. The closet missing everything that was mine. The silence would have screamed. And when she finally realized I was really gone, not just hiding down the street or waiting to cool off, that was the moment her wedding fell apart for good. No arguments. No scenes. No revenge. Just distance. That's what made it final. Not the words. Not a confrontation. The silence. The clean break. By the time she thought to start looking for me, I was hours away, crossing county lines, already checked into a quiet little place with no questions asked and no connection to my old life. My phone? Dead and buried. My past? Packed in a bag with no return address. And as for the wedding? It never happened. 7 months. That's how long it had been since I vanished. Life looks different when you're not waiting for the other shoe to drop. My days were simpler now, quiet mornings, decent coffee, real peace. I'd moved 2 counties over, found a new job running maintenance at a decent apartment complex. Clean work. Honest. No office politics, no small talk I didn't want. Just keys, tools, and silence. And yeah, I'd met someone. Her name's Maggie. No drama. Just kindness. A steady kind of love. She never pressed me to talk about the past, but she knew there was wreckage behind me. She saw the way I stared too long out the window some nights. She let me heal on my own terms. We'd been living together about 2 months when the past came knocking. Literally. It was a Saturday. Sun out. I was in the backyard fixing the latch on the gate when I heard Maggie call out, "Babe, there's someone at the door." I wiped my hands on my jeans, came inside, and there she was. Emily. Standing in my doorway like a ghost. Same eyes. Same look. That half-smile she used to give me when she was hiding something. She glanced past Maggie like she was a lamp in the corner. "We need to talk," she said. Maggie stood her ground. Didn't flinch. Just looked at me like, "Your call." I nodded. "Let her in," I said. Maggie stepped aside, calm as ever, and I motioned to the kitchen table. Emily walked in like she owned the place. Sat down, crossed her legs, and looked around with that old smug look like she was still in charge of the story. "You really settled here?" she asked, glancing at the framed photo of me and Maggie fishing at the lake. Cute little setup. Real cozy. She turned toward Maggie again and added, "I guess everyone needs a rebound." Maggie didn't even blink. Just quietly walked to the hallway, leaned against the wall, and waited. That's who she is. Classy. Steady. I pulled out 2 mugs, poured coffee, and sat down across from Emily. "You said you wanted to talk." She didn't waste time. "I want a second chance." Just like that. Like we'd taken a break, not crashed and burned on a life-filled highway. I didn't respond. Just took a sip of my coffee. "I made a mistake," she went on. "Okay." I let things get out of control. I got curious. I thought maybe I needed to explore who I was before committing forever. But you, she pointed at me like she was laying down a fact. You were always the best. You know that. Then she had the nerve to glance at Maggie and say it. Look at her, that little simpleton. You seriously think she can match me? Maggie heard it, of course. Her face turned red, but she didn't move. Didn't storm in. She just watched. That woman's tougher than steel, and I love her for it. I set my cup down, reached into the drawer beside me and pulled out the old manila folder. The same one Clay had handed me all those months ago. I slid it across the table. She hesitated, then opened it. Started flipping. Photos. Timestamp locations. A printed summary of every visit she'd made to Jenny's apartment. Screenshots of the texts I'd seen. She kept turning pages, slower and slower, until her hand stopped moving. Her mouth parted slightly. And just like that, her whole face changed. All that smugness melted off her like paint in a rainstorm. As she started, then stopped. Her hand trembled as she closed the folder. You have no idea, she said, voice soft now, what it felt like to be left at the altar. I leaned in across the table, calm, steady. Yeah? You have any idea what it feels like to look the person you love in the eye while they lie to your face? While they call betrayal a surprise? You remember that? She started to tear up. Said she'd been confused. Said she'd been experimenting. Said it didn't mean anything. Then she said the worst one. I still love you. She reached out like I was going to take her hand. I didn't move. You're the only one who really understood me, she whispered. I didn't realize what I had until I lost it. Then, right in front of Maggie, again, she took another shot. She's nothing compared to me. You know that. In every way. You and me? We had something real. Just one more chance. One night to talk, to clear it up. Just us. That was it. I stood up. Slowly. I looked her in the eye and said, that woman you're calling a simpleton? She's my future wife. She froze. You don't get to come in here, insult her, and pretend you've still got some kind of power. You cheated. With more than one person. You planned a whole wedding while sneaking around like it was some game. Her eyes darted to the folder. You're lucky I don't press charges for harassment, I added. Now get out. Or I call the cops. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Grabbed her purse and stood. Fine, she snapped. Brought in this dump with your plain little girlfriend. Maggie didn't move. Didn't say a word. Emily slammed the door behind her. The room went quiet again. Maggie walked over, kissed me on the cheek, and said, You okay? I nodded. Now I am. Later that night, I pulled out the flash drive and uploaded the files. I sent 2 emails. One to her parents with a simple message. You deserve to know who your daughter really is. And one to her office. Subject line, conduct unbecoming. I didn't include a message. The pictures spoke for themselves. Last I heard, she lost her job. Her parents stopped speaking to her. Jenny moved to another state. The wedding guests? All knew what really happened by Christmas. Some folks say I went too far. Maybe. But when you hand someone your heart and they treat it like a toy, sometimes you don't owe them mercy. You owe them the truth. And the truth? She earned every last bit of it. Share your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the protagonist was right to walk away without saying a word? If you liked the story, subscribe to the channel and give us a like.